Welcome to The Blitz, a podcast from Coram Deo Church. The Blitz is all about tackling tough topics head-on at full speed. Are you ready? Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day it is that you happen to be checking out this podcast. My name is John. I'm the lead pastor of Coram Deo Church, and I will be your host today on The Blitz. Not the Blitzin, but the Blitz. Okay, why do I say that? Because it's Christmas. It's the season of Advent. We've kicked off our Christmas series at church. The church is wonderfully decorated. You're walking into just a crazy celebration of Christmas, decorations everywhere, yummy cookies, all the stuff. We've got our Advent devotionals out, got the promo video rolling, and man, lights are up on the house. We are ready. And so it is Christmas time. So what I thought I would do, because it's been a couple weeks here, right? We have been very busy going into Thanksgiving and getting ready for Christmas, finalizing things. And, I just haven't been feeling good. I've been sick. And, not the Rona, but I've been sick. So took some time off, but now we're back. And so we're going to talk about Christmas. And we're going to talk about some of the more, controversial issues in the Christmas story. When you go to Costco and you see the Disney nativity scene or whatever scene that they have available, right? You just kind of, it's kind of Hallmarky, warmsy, fuzzy kind of feels, but there's a lot going on in the story that we really need to wrestle with and take seriously. And so for this episode and a handful of others, we'll probably do 2 or 3 in addition to this, we're going to talk about some of the parts of the story that are difficult, things that we need to think through. And so for this first episode, I thought let's talk about virgin birth. Why not, right? Without the virgin birth, you don't have the Christmas story. So I want to talk about it first, where we're getting that from the scriptures, how people have responded to it, and how would we respond? How would you answer somebody who is not a believer, doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in the Bible, who says, you can't expect me to take you seriously. We can't take your faith seriously. We can't take the biblical Christmas story seriously, because at the very center of the story is something that we all know was impossible, and that is a virgin giving birth. So let's just lay this out real quickly. Okay, this is not going to be in depth, and you know that if you've been on this, you've been on the podcast. We're dealing with things head on at full speed. It's bite sized, and so if you're looking for a 2-hour defense, that's not what this is. But we'll give it a couple minutes, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. So first of all, you got to know that the idea of virgin birth is not something that the New Testament authors are dreaming up. They're not making it up. This is, they're not the ones creating this idea. This actually is mentioned in the book of Isaiah, chapter 7, verse 14, where it says this: "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." Now this happens 2 chapters before one of the most famous Old Testament texts regarding Christmas, which is when it says, "The people who have walked in darkness, on them a great light has shone." And it starts to talk about what the coming king, the Messiah, is going to mean in terms of his government, his kingdom, and everlasting peace. But right before that, in chapter 7, we just have this interesting, right? This will be the sign. A virgin's going to have a son, and you're going to call him Emmanuel, which, of course, many of you know means God with us. So that's 750 years-ish before the birth of Christ. So virgin birth, that is coming originally from Isaiah chapter 7, okay? Now we fast forward, 750 years of history, and when you get to Matthew's gospel, Matthew and Luke are the only gospel writers who deal with the birth of Christ. They're covering different details, but they both deal with the birth of Christ. John doesn't deal with details regarding the birth, and Mark just starts with Jesus' earthly ministry. But in the book of Matthew, you've got a number of verses, which is Matthew is laying out the genealogy of Christ, and his point is that this is a descendant of Abraham, the one to whom the promise was given, and also a descendant from David, of course, the Davidic covenant, and the son who would reign on his throne forever and ever. That's really important. And so you've got 28 generations listed in the opening of Matthew chapter 1. And then Matthew he takes the genealogy right to Joseph, and then he goes to the birth of Christ. And of course, he's focusing on Joseph. And Joseph is betrothed to Mary. Okay, they're probably younger. And Joseph finds out that Mary is with child. Okay, now what kind of things go through your mind when you're engaged and you've kept yourself pure, and you find out that your fiance is pregnant, right? What do you do? And Matthew's very honest about Joseph's experience. Joseph did not want to bring public shame upon Mary, and so he had schemed to divorce her quietly. Now that word divorce, you're like, wait, they weren't married? Correct, they weren't married. They were betrothed. But a betrothal in that time was far more significant than an engagement in our time. There was actually a legal binding element to that. So Joseph couldn't just take off and call the wedding off. There actually had to be an actual process to bringing that betrothal to an end. So he had decided, being a just man, that hey, I'm not going to bring her to open shame, but I'm not walking into this marriage with my wife, who is not only pregnant, but is also she's convinced that she's a virgin. Do the math. That doesn't work. And so what happens is that Joseph has a dream. And in that dream, an angel of the Lord appears to him and reassures him that Mary is actually telling him the truth. And this Matthew records that all of this was taking place so that the scriptures would be fulfilled, that being Isaiah 7, that the virgin would bear a son and call his name Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Okay, so in the opening chapter of Matthew, it's acknowledged Joseph was just as caught off guard by the story of a pregnant virgin as anybody else would. He was not ignorant to human biology and sexuality, and so he knew what that meant. And he was going to leave, and yet an angel appeared to him. This was a very compelling, convincing case that this was actually true, and this promise made in Isaiah was coming to fruition. Okay, and then you have a very similar story in Luke's gospel, in which the angel Gabriel, actually visits Mary and tells her that she's going to have a child. And Luke is a doctor. That's really interesting, because if anyone was going to be skeptical, it certainly would be the professionally trained Dr. Luke. And he records for us that Mary's like, hey, how's this gonna work? And her response to the angel is quite understandable. It says, how will this be since I am a virgin? Okay, so here's Mary saying she's a virgin, not to be crass or anything, but she would be the authority on that. And so she says, hey, I don't understand this is work because I'm a virgin. And the angel answers her in verse 35. It says, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you, and therefore the child to be born will be called the Son of God. So in both gospel accounts, Matthew and Luke, where they are talking about the birth of Jesus and getting into the details, in both cases, it is recorded as a public fact that Mary was a virgin. Mary struggled with this initially, and the angel assured her that this was something that the Holy Spirit was doing in her. And Joseph, her fiance, understandably struggled with this, and an angel of the Lord appeared to him and assured him that yes, this is the promise that was given through Isaiah, that a virgin was going to conceive. It's coming to fruition right here. So both of them hear the same story. Both of them have a very similar response. Both of them are assured by an angel, that this in fact is a child conceived of the Holy Spirit. It is not the biological offspring of Joseph or any other man, but rather this is a virgin birth. This is absolutely unique. So what I wanted to establish right there is just that in the Old Testament, in Isaiah, and in both accounts of the birth of Jesus, it is clear, it is abundantly clear, it is not vague, it is not hinted at, it comes right out, doesn't try to hide anything here. Mary was a virgin. Joseph was not the biological father of Jesus. Jesus had no biological father. That is the biblical claim, okay? Now, there's a number of questions that arise once you say that, okay? And I'm just going to deal with two of them. One question is, how much does it matter? And the other question is, how would you respond to somebody who says, I just can't believe in something like that, okay? So the first question, how much does it matter? Rob Bell, who was once a highly influential pastor of a church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was Mars Hill Church, not to be confused with the Mars Hill of Mark Driscoll in Seattle, but this is a different Mars Hill Church in Grand Rapids. And he wrote a book called Velvet Elvis. He's a really great communicator. I don't appreciate what he communicates, but his craft is he's really, really good at it. So this is the question that he poses. And he says, what if tomorrow someone digs up definitive proof that Jesus has a real earthly biological father named Larry? And archaeologists find Larry's tomb and do DNA samples and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the virgin birth was really just a bit of mythologizing. I can't even read that. It's Monday. And the gospel writers threw it in to appeal to the followers of Mithra and Dionysian religious cults that were hugely popular at the time of Jesus, whose gods had virgin birth. Okay. He goes, hey, what if there really was a dude named Larry who was Jesus's father, and Mary lied about it, and the gospel writers got it wrong? What do we do? How does that matter? He goes on to say that I affirm the historic Christian faith, which includes the virgin birth and the Trinity and the inspiration of the Bible and much more. But if the whole faith falls apart when we re-examine and rethink one spring, then it wasn't that strong in the first place, was it? So here's what he's saying. He's like, yeah, I believe it, but I don't believe that it matters all that much. That's his answer. And I would just want to push back very, very hardly against that with great intensity. Unfortunately, we have a perspective right now. And this was written years ago. I think this was written in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. But Rob Bell did go on to not just question virgin birth, but to throw the whole thing away. Rob Bell is an apostate. And I think that matters, because what we were seeing in the unraveling, in the de-emphasizing, right? And I want you to notice the winsome, respectful, missional, contextual way that Rob's faith unraveled. He didn't say he didn't believe it personally, right? He says, I affirm it. But he denied the importance of that truth. And that was, one of the early threads to give way, which would then lead to the full tearing away of Rob Bell from the Christian faith. And that's a sad story. It should grieve us all to have to say that, because one, Rob Bell is an individual made in the image of God, and to reject and deny the gospel is to bring a horrific fate upon oneself, and it's also to embrace a life of an emptiness in this world. And so we should grieve because of that, We should grieve because of the many people who have been influenced by his writing, who have also, abandoned their faith, who have apostatized. And we should also grieve that there was a great thinking, communicating gift that the church had that it lost in that. So this is a huge loss. Nobody should be excited that Rob Bell has left the faith, but he has. And what I speculate is that what we're seeing in him questioning not was the virgin birth, did it really happen, but did it matter? That's what he's getting at. Does it matter, right? And so the answer to that question, does it matter, is a hearty yes. It absolutely does matter. Why does it matter? Because either the Bible is telling us the truth or it's not. And I know maybe that sounds really simplistic, but if the Bible tells me clearly that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, and that same text talks about the forgiveness of my sins and the deity of Christ and hope and forgiveness, and the Bible, and if those authors are willing to lie about virgin birth, then why would I trust them on anything else? I was recently having a conversation with somebody about the importance of honesty and telling the truth, and I said, if you have a chain made up of a bunch of links, how many chains do you have to break how many links do you have to break the entire chain? Well, the answer is just one. Just one breaks the entire chain. This is really, really important. It's not some nominal, speculative, belief or tenet of our faith. This is promised clearly in the Old Testament. It is declared clearly, emphatically in the New Testament that Mary was in fact a virgin who conceived this son who was altogether unique, right? We don't just believe that the circumstances of his birth was unique. We believe that he himself is unique, that God, the Son, the second person of the Trinity, the eternal Word that was in the beginning, was with God, was God, the maker of all things. He took flesh to himself in the person of Jesus Christ and was born of the Virgin Mary. If he wasn't born of the Virgin Mary, then the very foundation itself has crumbled. And so I would just argue it's really, really important, not just that you believe in the virgin birth because that's what the Bible teaches, but that you understand the importance of the virgin birth, right? It absolutely matters. Without virgin birth, we have no Christmas story. Without a Christmas story, we have no Christ. We have no gospel. We have just a regular guy who loved people and did some good things, but he had the same sin problem that's been handed down by every earthly father to their sons and daughters, right? Virgin birth absolutely matters. So theologically, yes, this is a weighty, important issue. And once you start to unravel things like that, the threads start to continually, like dominoes, they just start falling, okay? And we see that tragically in the life and ministry of Rob Bell. So yes, this matters. It absolutely matters. So here's the other question, and that is maybe aimed more at the person who is on the inside, somebody who is already a believer or somebody who has already come to terms with the existence of God and is now trying to come to terms with is Christ the Son of that God. But there's a flip side to the coin that I want to talk about, and that is the anti-theist or the theist who is a skeptic, who's saying, hey, you're asking me to believe in this gospel, in this Jesus who you believe is God in the flesh, and you want me to obey him and confess him, and yet your story is built on this claim of virgin birth. And here's the thing: I am a skeptic, I am a critical thinker, I am scientifically minded, and if there's one thing that I know is that virgins don't give birth. So I can't believe the biblical Christmas story. I can't believe in your Jesus, which is what they might say, but what they mean there is the Jesus. I can't believe in this Jesus because believing in him requires me to believe in virgin birth, and I just can't do that. My science, my education, my intellect will not allow me to believe that, okay? So that's not an uncommon sentiment. That's not an uncommon thing that you will hear people say. But I love apologetics, and what I want to suggest to you is that the person who makes that claim is either not totally being sincere, or they are being sincere and they haven't quite thought it through. Okay, so either they're not totally being sincere about what they're willing to believe, which may be the case, or they are being sincere, but they haven't quite thought things through all the way. So let me unpack that briefly. Okay, if you deny the existence of a creator God, right, which is what atheism and anti-theism does. It fundamentally rejects and denies the existence of a creator God. Now, in that worldview, you still have to give an account for all the stuff, right? We are wired as human beings in such a way that we want to know the answer to the question, where did this stuff come from? Right? And not just like the stuff, like the stars and the trees and the ground and the insects and all the critters and all that. It's not just that, it's also human life. Where did human life come from? Okay, now follow me. If you deny the existence of a God, and I'm not even talking about the Christian understanding of God, I'm just talking about the existence of some sort of God who created things. If you deny the existence of some sort of God, okay, then what you have, and you can add all sorts of time, you can add all sorts of coincidences and processes and all sorts of things into this, but what you essentially have is a worldview that says nothing turned into something for no purpose, for no real reason. Nothing turned into a something for no real purpose or reason or without any sort of design, okay? Now, in that worldview, what you have is human life coming from nothing, right? Ultimately, human life comes from nothing. Now, you might talk about proteins, you might talk about energy, you might talk about pressure, you might talk about time, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of time. But when you reduce that story down to its most basic parts, you have nothing turning into something. Actually, you have everything coming from nothing, right? So nothing turns into everything for no reason, for no purpose, with no plan, with no design, okay? You have to accept in an atheistic worldview that human life ultimately came from nothing, or it came from something that came from nothing, right? You just have to own that. There's no way around it. It's just a necessary part of an atheistic worldview. So if as an atheist, you are willing to hold to this position that human life ultimately came from nothing, if you are willing to accept that, then on what grounds could you consistently reject the idea that human life would come from a woman? Okay? Now, there's specific words I'm using, and I'm using them on purpose, right? And I want you to know what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying, why would an atheist reject the story of virgin birth? That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, how could an atheist hold to a worldview in which life comes from nothing, and then consistently, while holding that worldview, deny the claim that life came from a female? Now, on the medical scientific side of things, you go like, well, life needs to come from a male and a female, or I guess prevailing wisdom would say birthing persons or whatever nonsense. Whatever, you know what I'm saying? A female, a mother, right? A mother and a father are necessary to create a child. But if you're willing to say that life came from nothing, then then on what grounds could you consistently argue that that same life could not come from half of the equation, which is necessary? It couldn't come from a woman, right? And that's not a scientific argument. It's a philosophical argument, right? And here's what I believe is true. And if you disagree with this, I'd like to hear, because I have yet to hear somebody who would kind of dismantle this argument. But if you're willing to accept that human life came from nothing, then you should at least be willing to accept that human life came from a virgin, because a virgin presents infinitely more of the necessary parts for human life than nothingness does. And so you really can't consistently hold to atheism and reject virgin birth. And what that means is that virgin birth can't be a reason, a consistent reason for you to reject Christianity, for you to reject the Christmas story, for you to reject the God of the Bible, because the atheist has already demonstrated that they are willing to accept that human life came from nothing. Okay, so virgin birth is a miracle. It is incredible. It is a mystery. It is clearly proclaimed in the scriptures. It is a core element of what we believe about the person and work of Jesus Christ, and you cannot simultaneously hold to atheism and then reject virgin birth. I don't believe you can do it. So chew on that a bit. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. That's going to be it for this episode of The Blitz. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We will see you most likely next week, Lord willing, as we talk about some more of the mystery of the Christmas story. All right, until next time, take care.